Do animals have souls? Welcome to Philosopher's Corner. I'm John. Do animals have souls? Well, I did another video on what are souls, and souls seem to be a spark of the electroplasmatic energy, the electrostatic plasmatic energy that is the fundamental layer of reality before we get to the void. And then a material corporeal body sort of wraps around it, has consciousness, and then goes around as a being. And that sort of acts as its eternal memory, almost like a portable iCloud storage for the individual as it goes throughout reality eternally. So do animals have a soul in the same way? So how do we go about discerning whether or not an animal has a soul? And it's similar to, I would say, a Turing test. Not the same, but a Turing test for machine intelligence or artificial intelligence, where in that sense, they're trying to test if an intelligence can pass as a human. Well, in the same way, there can be a series of guideposts or tests or measurements to figure out if an animal on the inside is either some sort of robotic automaton or if it has a consciousness inside of it that's making judgments and directing the behavior and action of the body and the habits. So I think it's helpful when we approach animals intellectually to determine whether or not they have a soul, or to try to get close to determining it, by starting on this level playing field where reality begins with no beings, right? You have the void, and then you have creation, and then creation appears, and you have beings. Now, as Homo sapiens, we have taken to categorizing and labeling and organizing for thoughtful purposes what we consider to be the different types of beings and the different classes of beings. And we've generally called this science, of this cataloging of the different beings that exist. And we've self-appointedly created categories of intelligence and sentience and all these different things. And we're trying to fit all of creation into these different categories. Now, the categories themselves, some of them are objective and some of them are subjective. I would say that actually when you really get into any of the metrics, they mainly have some degree of subjectivity, right? Some are objective in terms of measurements of height and weight and, looking at all the different biological systems that comprise an animal and then trying to rank them based on complexity of their systems of biological organism or their ability to compute and process certain information or interact with the reality, or all sorts of things that are basically hardware for their body. And then there's the more subjective side of things where determinations are attempted to be made on intelligence, where, I say intelligence is applied awareness, and they try to make assessments based on intelligence and some things that are more subjective. And they famously give tests to different animals to try to determine their level of intelligence. Famously, they have the crow experiments where they place crows in situations where they need to do problem solving to get food. And the problem solving in the more advanced tests includes giving crows raw materials to make tools in which to retrieve the food. In fact, I think the one I remember was they put a piece of food in a jar in an inaccessible location, but they gave them a paper clip that if they could fashion a tool out of the paper clip, then they could retrieve the food, which, as the scientific setup, it implied that if the crow could figure out the concept of creating the tool for that moment to retrieve it, then it achieved a certain level of intelligence objectively to the scientists. And the crows, in fact, did do that repeatedly. And in fact, interestingly, they would fashion the tool in different manner each time. So it wasn't even just a rote sort of discovery of how to create the tool. They were doing it differently each time, which indicated even more intelligence. So, and that's not the only animal that's been tested for intelligence. Like, there's a tremendous amount of tests for intelligence that have gone across the animal kingdom. The tool tests are obviously fairly common. They're not the only ones. Octopus comes to mind. They test octopus, same kind of thing, problem solving abilities. Obviously, dogs are so intelligent, especially certain breeds of dogs are so intelligent that they're hired by human workforces to do human jobs. In fact, if we look no further than German Shepherds, we could see the German Shepherds have multiple occupations. German Shepherds range from police dogs to drug dogs to seeing eye dogs, which when you really look into what that entails, it's extremely impressive that a dog who seemingly has no concept of the artificial human world can be taught many of not just the rules of the human world, but the etiquettes of the human world, and also how to translate that and communicate that and interact with a human. In fact, a disabled human, a human who has limited or no eyesight, and guides that human around the human world and communicates with them back and forth and acts as a team. It's extremely impressive. So in the journey to figure out whether animals have souls, displayed intelligence has to play a part. Because where does that intelligence emanate from? When you go back to the source, right, we have a tremendous amount of intelligence tests from species of animal across all spectrum that demonstrate anywhere from nominal to extreme intelligence all across the board. So just in the beginning of inquiring whether or not animals have souls, we already know that enough animals have displayed, scientifically displayed and repeated intelligence that you already have to begin the inquiry with admitting that animals possess measurable intelligence, comparable to human intelligence. In fact, with those crows, they said the crows were demonstrating problem-solving skills of a 5 to 7-year-old child. And that's just one of them. I mean, I don't know, when you talk about a seeing eye dog, and German Shepherds aren't the only breed of dog that perform seeing eye duties. When you're talking about seeing eye duties, you're talking, I don't know where they place it at, but when you look at the complexity of what they're doing, it's beyond a 7-year-old. You wouldn't trust a 7-year-old to take somebody around the city in the manner that you do a German Shepherd. I don't know what age you would rank it at, but it's I think it's older. It requires more sophistication. So in terms of the beginning of the inquiry, we can check the box on intelligence. Animals have demonstrated intelligence across the board. And intelligence, when we forensically go back, cause and effect chain of intelligence, to the animal, we sort of necessarily have to come to the conclusion that the intelligent activities are being born out of a source of energy within the animal, which already points to the fact that there's a soul, because we kind of have to say that a corporeal body, a physical body, is being animated by a soul. And certainly when we get to the discernment of an intelligent set of actions coming out of a body, that points towards the soul. Now, when we go to the next level, and some people might rightly say, well, okay, fine, maybe these bodies are producing intelligent results, but that doesn't necessarily say that there's a soul in there. Like I need to know that there's intention, or that there's communication emanating from that energy source within the body, for me to be more comfortable saying, oh, well, that animal has a soul. Well, in the next part of our inquiry, when we're looking for that, we have all sorts of animals who directly communicate through language with human beings. We can start simply with physical communication of animals, which nearly all of us have experienced, whether it's dogs or cats or birds or domestic pets or any manner of animal that makes an emotional connection with us, right? Any animal on a farm, people make friends with donkeys and pigs and horses, and pretty much any animal, if you get them into the right situation, can create a connection with you and express themselves physically in physical affection, physical communication. It's undeniable that they do this. And nearly every human who's ever lived for a decent amount of time has experienced some sort of animal interaction where you know in your heart that they're communicating with you. So just on that level of physical communication, animals are demonstrating to you that they have faculty, they have agency, they have intention, they have an emotional life, that they are connecting to us as humans in our emotional life. The next level of trying to determine their intention and their ability to communicate in inner life is flat out language. So just for starters, we have innumerable amounts of birds who literally speak human languages to us. And some people will of course say, well, you know, those parrots, they're just mimicking, or they're rotely saying things. And I understand that, like, some parrots are, okay? Now for starters, that would already be pretty good step in the right direction for what we're trying to figure out. Because if animals didn't have souls, there wouldn't be any of that going on. Because if they don't have souls, then they're just like meat robots, just running on instinct, not making any new decisions, no variation in behavior, no variation in an attempt to communicate. A meat robot wouldn't attempt to communicate with you. Or if a meat robot would try to communicate with you, why? That's a dead end, really, in terms of inquiry. There's nothing animating a meat robot, which is what animals are if they don't have souls, right? But in this area where now they're blatantly communicating an inner life, at a minimum, through birds and parrots speaking, we can then go, wow, that's pretty cool. Then what's the next level of communicating inner life? Well, communicating a consciousness or a conscience, right? And parrots do that. There are plenty of parrots who, through limited vocabulary in multiple different human languages, communicate in a manner that indicates that they're aware of their surroundings, that they're aware of the context of the language being communicated, that it's not rote, that they actually have a feel for the communication, and they're expressing an inner life. You can look it up. Even if you just go to an animal show in your local animal park, you're going to see typically they have a parrot show where the parrots are there and they're cracking jokes and having a good time, And some of it's behavior based, but a lot of it's not. A lot of it's them having a personality and an attitude and like talking to you. Okay, so that's one level. You know, maybe the most famous animal that's ever communicated was Coco, the sign language gorilla. So if there was ever a doubt about animals directly communicating an inner life, an inner consciousness, or intelligent thoughts, all of which are the indications of a soul, Coco, look up videos of Coco, and she was taught sign language and would have visitors and would have full conversations with humans and express emotions, complex emotions, and communicate sophisticated states of consciousness. And they were individual. She was having unique conversations with the people that were with her. And you could feel that her language skills, what she was communicating, was matching her body language. It was matching the context of the conversation. It was really nearly indistinguishable from another human being having a conversation. And when we're philosophically asking, do animals have souls? We really only need this sort of first contact to validate the principle that animals have souls. And with Coco, all of those things were prevalent. And most people who experienced her or witnessed her or found out about her took that as such. They took it as evidence that animals have souls and that they are capable of expressing it to the human world, which is rather extraordinary. You know, and maybe as we move forward, it becomes less extraordinary and more just us living in harmony with animals. But at this point in the evolution of the species, it's sort of impressive. So when we're trying to figure out, do animals have souls? We go down this list of, do they have an inner life? Are they self-aware to some degree? Do they have the ability to communicate this inner life and this consciousness to others? We're asking a lot for them to prove it to us cross-species. Cross-species communication, there's no chart on it, but it's a high bar to ask another species to cross-communicate, especially when, you know, Homo sapiens are a highly intelligent species and we're sort of hyper obsessed with awareness and managing consciousness and dealing with consciousness. And then we're placing a very high burden on other animals to communicate to us sufficiently. They don't know that they're being subjected to scientific levels of inquiry to try to determine who's inside them. They're living. Despite all that, they've displayed intelligence, they've displayed intent, they've displayed emotion, they've displayed communication of consciousness, and they've expressed it to other human beings in languages that human beings understand, in human constructed languages. Dude, Coco figured out sign language. I can't even do sign language. So, do animals have souls? I think they do. Well, I hope you found this helpful. Thanks for spending some time here at Philosopher's Corner, and have fun.